All ages, this is At the Helm Sports. I'm your host, Derek Helm. Thank you for joining me for episode 187. Please be sure to follow and subscribe on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Leave those 5-star reviews if you're watching on YouTube. Hit that like button, subscribe. And down in the comment section, let me know who is your favorite quarterback to target this year in fantasy football, because that's what we're going to be diving into this week. It is football season right around the corner. Very excited to break it down today. We're going to go through the quarterback and tight end tiers here for 2025 fantasy football. But first, some housekeeping. Head over to the madlabmma.com. Obviously, MadLab has combat sports on absolute lock. If you are making any wagers whatsoever on boxing or MMA, you need to go over there. It pays for itself. He is absolutely incredible, and his record speaks for itself. Also, DFS in UFC, it's incredible tools, basically huge breakdowns, fighter metrics, everything you could possibly want, live streams before every fight. So check that out. And then we also have the NFL package. You will get our betting package free with your MMA subscription, as well as my breakdowns every Sunday. I do what's called the Contrarian Corner, basically breaking down what my favorite games are to target. It's not just, hey, this guy is going to be low owned, play him, but it's basically looking at what the chalk is going to be, ways to potentially utilize the chalk and ways to get different with the chalk in your lineup, or just ways to get totally off the board, and some of my favorite stacks there. So you'll get all of that as well as the MMA content. So check that out. But we are here to talk about fantasy football. And joining me, we have the crew. We're back. And Mike Carpanini. How we doing, Mike?
Boys, how are you now?
And Dave Utnick. Dave?
Gentlemen, good to be back.
Yeah, it's exciting. We got another football season. We've been doing this the past couple of years, and it's always some of my favorite shows. So today we're going to go through the quarterbacks, and I mean, what are you guys thinking here or expecting for the season? Because I'll just really quickly going through these tiers. I think there's some clear cut guys at the top of both quarterback and tight end. And these 1Z positions, they fall off a cliff really, really quick. I think we're going to get to it as we get further down here. You can lump a lot of these guys together. But Dave, what are you thinking?
I mean, I usually like in both positions to be, drafting one of the later guys off the board. Feel like you can get value late, but I think you've got some real clear cut advantages when you go up top this year. As we get into each of these top, couple of tiers across each position, you're going to be getting a lot bigger differentiator between, QB 1 and 2 versus QB 7. Than QB 7 versus QB 14 for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Mike, what about you? Is there anything in particular you're looking at?
Not really. Honestly, it looks like just a whole bunch of guys. Either the quarterback position is getting worse or they're all just kind of getting better together. Because, I think a lot of these tiers kind of mush together.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. I do think as a whole, we're getting some more competent quarterback play compared to what we've had in previous years. But at the same time, I do think that it's not as much of the elite tier. It's just kind of competent quarterback play. So on a week to week basis, maybe you don't get the finishes or production that you would necessarily like. But why don't we just dive right into it, because we got a lot to go through here, and it's football season. I'm excited here. So tier one of the quarterbacks, it's pretty clear cut, and you can basically make a case for either one of these guys to go first at quarterback. And I have Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, and I go back and forth between who I would necessarily want to take first at quarterback, but I kind of lean Josh Allen, and it's more from a standpoint. I just think you get a little bit more of a safer floor with just his rushing, especially the touchdowns. But last year, 3,731 passing yards, not great. 28 touchdowns. I mean, he's taken a significant step back. The offense is a little bit more run heavy, but he had 4 straight years of 4,200 or more passing yards. So last year was a little bit of a letdown there, but 100 less attempts than he had in 2023. So as I said, that they're running the ball a little bit more, but He's made improvements not turning the ball over, still offers plenty of rushing with 531 rushing yards last year. Second straight year, double digit rushing touchdown. So that's what I was talking about there is I just think that the fact that he is basically the goal line back for this team and can get you those rushing touchdowns, I just like that a little bit more than Lamar. Now, Lamar was incredible in his own right, basically had a career year, career highs in passing yards, touchdowns, and attempts. 41.72 passing yards, that was sixth best in the league. 41 touchdowns, that was second in the league. 474 attempts. He led the league with 8.8 yards per attempt, which was by far the most air yards. And I just I think he's stepped up his game from a passing standpoint. He's still going to give you the rushing, a little bit more on the yardage than he will rushing touchdowns, but definitely still offers the upside on the ground. And I think he stepped up big time through the air. I worry about him being able to throw 40 touchdowns again. It's such an outlier season. I don't know if we can bank on that. But Dave, what are you thinking here with these two?
I mean, a lot of it comes down to scoring, also, depending on what your league looks like. I think you're getting a bit more passing upside out of Josh Allen than Lamar Jackson, but they're both extremely. I mean, they're extremely elite. Both of them are going to do exactly what you want. I mean, Josh Allen ran for 12 touchdowns last year. I mean, that's a huge boost just to his total points in general. You think of Lamar more getting rushing yards than the touchdowns because he's not their goal line back, especially with Derrick Henry there. Both of them are just extremely good plays. I mean, it's hard. You can flip a coin and be right half the time. Basically, it really doesn't matter which one you're taking. These two are a clear cut above everyone else, though, from what they provide in the passing game and the rushing game. You're really not getting that type of, like you said, that reliable floor week after week with the off the charts league winning upside. Also, both of them probably put up 40, 50-point games on multiple occasions last year. So you're getting a lot with each of these guys. And, the only thing neither of them really has is a lot of weapons around them. That's the only kind of, knock you've got on either of them is their weapons aren't great, which also plays back into, so we're talking about fantasy points and quarterbacks here. They're going to have to try to do it themselves. So you've got everything that you need in either of these two guys. And, I think they are leaps and bounds above the rest of the group.
Yeah, and I guess after a couple years of doing this, you would think that I'd be a little bit better at it, but I get so excited to just jump into it every single year. My rankings, my tiers are all based off of 4 point passing touchdowns and half point PPR. So just to get that out of the way, I know we've had some discrepancies in the past where a lot of our leagues are 6 point passing touchdowns, but everything I'm basing everything off of is 4 point passing touchdown, which does elevate that rushing a little bit more. And I completely agree with what you're saying with the weapons. I mean, if these guys had weapons, I think it would even bump them up even further away from the rest of the pack here. And still, I think it's interesting. Keon Coleman wasn't great last year. I do think that he could be a little bit better. Obviously, Khalil Shakir is a little bit banged up. You would think that Kincaid, a little further along in his career, maybe could step up a little. I do like Josh Palmer quite a bit. I don't think that he's a superstar by any means, but I do think that we've seen him step in when Keenan Allen and Mike Williams have been hurt. He is a solid NFL wide receiver, so I do think that that helps there. As far as Lamar goes, I think the addition of Derrick Henry last year just helped him tremendously because you have to focus on him so much. Obviously, Mark Andrews is getting a little bit older, so how much is he going to be able to contribute? Had career high in touchdowns last year, but can that continue? I do like Flowers, but I worry about him on a week to week basis. On really, can he be your number one? Bateman kind of is what he is. So these guys don't have great supporting casts, but they are just so great in their own right that they can win you any week.
And Lamar also, I mean, the Derrick Henry factor, he threw for 41 touchdowns last year versus 23, I think it was the year before. So just having that goal line threat opens him up for short screen passes, things like that. But the injury to Isaiah Likely is one of the weapons that he also relied on a lot last year, and that is a bit concerning for this offense.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point with Henry is I think that's part of the reason why Andrews had so many touchdowns is because you get down close to the goal line, you have to focus so much on Henry that it sucks those linebackers up, and Andrews just basically gets behind him and scores some touchdowns. But you said it. I mean, 20 something touchdowns, a jump all the way up to 40. Is that really repeatable year in, year out? That's my only concern with Lamar. But Mike, what are you thinking with these guys here?
You're splitting. Like these are the only two that separate themselves. Like it's you both said it. There's nothing I could say to add to it. They're 1 and 1A, and you could put them in any order you want. I'm gonna throw it back. Like, where do you have to get them at? Like standard, whatever, 10, 12 team league, snake draft. Like, how high up do you have to go to get these two?
They're going end of the second round, early third round, which third
It
round,
honestly seems lower than I would have guessed. Like, I would have said mid to top of the second. I could see, somebody get creative there.
yeah, I just I think this year it's basically you're taking one of these two or you're just waiting, and you
Yeah.
can wait and you can get a guy in the eighth round that might be as good as a guy that you took in the fifth or sixth. Now, I'll say that tier two is definitely deserves to be in a higher tier than a lot of the rest of these guys, but these two are clear cut above the rest. I just when building a team, it worries me a little bit. In round two, you can get just elite wide receivers, elite running backs, and giving that up, I think there's such a far drop off from the elite wide receivers and running backs compared to what you're getting later in the draft that it concerns me a little bit taking one of these guys in the second round. Now, if I can start off with elite wide receiver, elite running back, and then get one of these, I'd be a lot more comfortable with that, I think.
And the scenarios where these guys fall a little bit, it becomes even better play. If you start talking about the top of the third round instead of into the second, where you've already gotten one wide receiver and one stud running back, or two of one of either of them, then it becomes a lot more appealing to take one of these guys as your third pick versus wasting a second round pick on them. But you're certainly going to get a lot of points on a week to week basis, and that will balance out a lot of the other deficiencies on your team for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So tier two, I do think that these guys are definitely a step above the rest of the guys behind them, and it's Jalen Hurts, Joe Burrow, Jaden Daniels. Now, I know some people are a little bit lower on Hurts. Maybe that's because of the existence of Barkley, but I still think he deserves to be here. Burrow, obviously, incredible weapons. I mean, led the league in passing last year in touchdowns and yardage. Actually added a little bit with his feet, 201 yards, 2 touchdowns. He needs the volume. He doesn't get much with his legs, but with how terrible this defense is, I definitely think that he can definitely repeat those numbers. And then Jaden Daniels, we see it every year where a rookie comes out and just absolutely dominates and takes a step back the next year, defenses can kind of figure him out. And then Cliff Kingsbury, obviously, we saw that with Kyler Murray. So it is a concern. And obviously, if McLaurin's not going to be there, it's a huge concern. But I do still think that he deserves to be here. I mean, 3,500 yards, 25 touchdowns as a passer in your first year is pretty impressive. And then basically Lamar numbers, 891 rushing yards and 6 touchdowns that's huge. He averaged 29.6 points last year from weeks 12 to 17. So I think he absolutely should be there. But back to Hurts, Barkley obviously is a presence, but I do think that it still helps Hurts. The tush push is not going anywhere. I do think that AJ Brown dealing with a hamstring right now, but if he stays healthy this year, I could see them bouncing back a little bit more in the passing game. And we still know that the double digit rushing touchdowns are basically going to be there for Hurts. So 3 straight years with at least 13 rushing touchdowns, I really don't see that part of his game going anywhere. So I really think that these three guys are definitely in a tier of their own there. So, Mike, what do you think about these guys? Do you think I got this tier right? Do you think that they are clear cut above the rest of them, or is there anything else you would change about this?
I think you got it right, but you said they're a clear cut step above every. Like I think it's closer to half a step. I just don't see. You've got a couple names in the next tier that they're perpetual. You know, some of them top three. Even top five, top eight, top. I just they're mushy here. This is where it starts getting mushy. I think two mushes into three, three mushes into four. If you have to define it, I get it. That's the gist of the show. Like, I think you did get it right. I was never big on Hurts to begin with, so I'm not one of those dudes coming back off of Hurts. Like, I was just never super there. I think Burrow has basically shown himself to be what he is at this point. It's you'd expect having two of the best wide receivers in the league for him to just be cracking that top tier by now, and that just never materialized. So, I think he's right where he should be, and I'm a big Daniels fan. I hope it continues, but sophomore slumps kind of are a thing with quarterbacks sometimes. So, I think the tier is right, but I just don't think it's as big of a step up from the next one or two that you guys might think.
Yeah, and that's fair. I don't think that these guys are pushing to maybe finish in front of Lamar or Allen. I don't think they're that elite, but I do think that they have a little bit safer floors compared to the other guys. I think as we get further down here, you're going to see a lot more volatility on a week to week basis. And I do think that these guys probably have the best path to finish somewhere in the top five. So that's what I mean by that. I don't think that they are the elite of the elite, but I do think that they're just have a little bit more safety while still having some week to week upside. Dave, what are you thinking here?
I I agree with 2 out of 3 here. Daniels and Hurts adding the rushing upside that they have. Daniels was second in the league in rushing to Lamar Jackson last year, and although he might take a step back, he still builds in all those extra points with that type of rushing floor. So I have no problem with him there or Hurts with the tush push and, grabbing another 10, 12, 15 touchdowns again this year. It's Joe Burrow that I'm knocking down into the next tier here. Yeah, he led the league in yards. Yeah, he led the league in touchdowns. He's going to have to repeat it to be in this tier again. And with the amount of quarterback talent in the league, and Joe Burrow is really good at real football. If this was not fantasy football, he is in this tier, if not tier one. But for fantasy purposes, I'm knocking him down to the next tier because he doesn't have that rushing upside. His 200 yards, I mean, most of that was against the Giants on that Monday night game in one run. I don't see him running enough, and he does take a lot of hits. I'm not going to call him injury prone, but he has an injury history, and that's a lot for a late third round pick here. So I don't want to reach this high for Burrow. If he falls down into the tier with the other quarterbacks we're about to discuss, I'm all for it. But when we're talking about differentiators, Jaden Daniels could make that step up even further, where we're talking about him in tier one come next year. So I'm all about it in this tier, and Hurts just consistently is up around here because of his rushing touchdown upside.
Yeah, and that's fair. I think Burrow. I mean, obviously, it's all he has to stay healthy. But any of these guys we're talking about, if they have injuries, then it all goes out the window anyway. I think the way that this team is built, it's his floor is probably 4,000 yards and 35 touchdowns. So I do think that that's probably borderline top five, regardless. I mean, we don't see a lot of guys just year in and year out throwing 35, 40 touchdowns. So I that's part of the reason why I have him up here. Now I do have the other two. I would be much more comfortable taking them over Burrow. And again, the issue here is, we were talking about Lamar or Allen in second or third. These guys, you don't have to lay as much capital, but they are still going pretty early. So it's not exactly. I think especially Burrow, I've seen him go fourth round. I probably wouldn't do that. It's funny. A lot of drafts, it looks like Hurts is actually going the deepest of all of them, and I'd probably rather him over the other two. So I think if it falls to me, I'm definitely happy taking one of these guys. But as I was saying earlier, I think this is a year where if you don't get those top two guys and these guys don't fall to a place where you're comfortable, I'm fine waiting. So
Yeah, absolutely. And, Burrow really does add a lot, but you also have to think about game environment. They were playing from behind all year long. And not that their defense is any better than it was last year, but you got to hope that they just play a lot better in general, where, they started 0 and I don't remember what it was, but they were chasing their tail all season and had to win out to have a chance at the end of the year. You got to hope that they're going to be at least a little bit more competitive in the beginning of the year where we're not playing catch up the entire game for the Bengals.
yeah, I don't know. I still think that they're gonna struggle defensively. So maybe it's not as bad as last year, but they're gonna have to throw a lot and just these weapons dumping it off to Chase Brown. You have obviously Jamar Chase, and if Higgins can stay healthy, they just added a Noah Fant. Gesicki, I just think that this is going to be one of the best offenses in the league. He's probably still up there, but again, it all comes down to draft capital for me with him. So we'll have to see how that pans out. But if we move to the next tier, now this is where you can start poking holes in everybody. And I mean, you can even make a case maybe that my next year you can move some guys up here, but I do have these guys here. I have confidence in Bo Nix. Now, we just said with Jaden Daniels, we see guys come out, perform well in their rookie year, and then fall back. I have a lot more trust in Bo Nix than I even do necessarily Jaden Daniels. Not necessarily the player, but the system, the offense. It's just Sean Payton is going to put him in a good position. They have a very good offensive line. I think he can repeat what he does last year. He offers enough with the rushing. Finished his quarterback 7 last year, and I could see him finishing right around there again this year. So I do like that. 3,700 yards, 29 touchdowns as a rookie. I don't think anybody saw that coming. 430 rush yards, 4 touchdowns. Definitely like that quite a bit. He was not really sacked very often either. So it's just I could see him coming out here and basically just duplicating exactly what he did last year. And I think if he does that, he is definitely probably in this 5, 6, 7 range. Sack percentage last year was only 4%. Just to put that in perspective, basically you're looking at Mahomes at 5.83. You have Goff was 5.44. So some of the better offensive lines, and he still was sacked at a lower rate. So that is definitely something that you like is got some weapons, got a good coach, and I just think that he's in a system where he's going to thrive. Next, I have Patrick Mahomes, 3,928 passing yards. That's his lowest as a starter. 26 passing touchdowns, matches his career low. This concerns me a little bit. He just hasn't been good for fantasy. We obviously know that he is probably the best quarterback in football, but it just hasn't translated from a fantasy standpoint. Now, Rashi Rice probably going to get suspended. We don't know how long, but I do think that Worthy takes a step forward. I don't think Kelsey is washed. Obviously, still had a pretty productive year last year. People forget that he started the year banged up and was very injured. So for him to still come away with the amount of catches he had in the season he had, I think he still has a little bit left in the tank. The problem is, do they actually come out and want to play offense, or are they going to continue to just basically sleepwalk through games and let their defense do the work? That's the biggest question to me. But I do still think, just talent alone, he deserves to be here. Next, Kyler Murray just has never really lived up to what we thought Kyler Murray could be, but he's still worth it here. I think he offers enough rushing yards. He was fourth last year, 572 yards. Not a ton of touchdowns, but he will still give you the yardage. 3,851 passing yards. That's the second highest of his career. The touchdowns weren't really there, but he's going to get you there. Obviously, has McBride. I think Harrison takes a step forward. So I do like him this year. And then Dak Prescott only played 8 games last year, wasn't great, but previously threw 4,536 touchdowns. The defense should be weaker, especially if they get rid of Parsons. So, like we were saying with Burrow, probably going to have to throw a lot. I think the addition of Pickens is huge for him. I mean, throwing the deep ball, he made some absolute scrubs fantasy viable from week to week. So I think Prescott is a little bit underrated here. But what are we thinking for this tier, guys? Dave, what do you think? I mean, like I said, I think you could poke holes in any of these guys. You can move them around in musical chairs, but
I think you're getting wildly different ADP value on each of them too. You're going to
yep,
have to reach up high for Mahomes a bit. I do like Mahomes in a bit of like we used to see with Tom Brady, come out in fuck you mode from time to time. The offense is sleepwalking through. The passing offense isn't that great anymore. He's not as good as he used to be. Worthy's emerging. Rashee Rice will be back from suspension after a couple of games. Hollywood Brown's still there. I think this offense comes out, really flying this year. I think they're due for a nice bounce back. I think the tier's too big because we are starting to get into mush. I'm not interested in taking Bo Nix this high. Dak and Kyler you're going to get much later than Patrick Mahomes, but I also do like them here. I mean, if we're looking at just ADP, you're looking at Kyler going around like in the 90s versus Mahomes at 56. So you can get much better value on Kyler. He does give you that rushing upside. I really like Dak this year, but I think it's Mahomes kind of on his own in this next tier, and I kind of push these guys down, but I'm not reaching for any of them here. I could see with Dallas's lack of running game where the Cowboys are throwing the ball all over the field, but you also don't need to reach up as high as we're talking about for Dak Prescott right now, going, around like pick 100, 110 or so. So I mean, you're getting a lot of value when you start playing in those fields there. But for me, this is not really you know, a solid tier, a tier that I'm picking off much. I'm not reaching for any of these guys. I like Pat Mahomes, but his ADP is probably too high. So I don't love a lot of what we got going on here.
yeah, and that's the thing. I think Mahomes is going where he is strictly on name alone because fantasy wise, it has not been good. And I mean, you look at his game logs last year: 14 points, 12 points, 16, 13, 13, 12, 18. It's until week 9 that he scores over 20 points, scoring 24, and then it's back to 16, 15. I'm not taking a quarterback in. Where is he going right now? The end of the fifth. It's yeah, 5'7" is his average draft position.
Yeah, it's just an odd spot to start putting these guys together in tiers because we are
I
starting, like Mike said, we're gonna all get lumped together
yeah,
now that we've gotten past the first 4 to 5 guys. This is gonna be, you figure, a 12-team league. This is the back half where everyone's gonna start waiting now. And there's a couple of names that I mean I like Kyler and Mahomes a lot, not at their draft value, but I'll throw to Mike for Justin Fields. I'd throw him in the mix if we're having a big group like this too.
go ahead, Mike. You're muted.
Dumbass.
All right. Well, anyway, yeah, this is where it just gets super mushy to me. Like I said, if we're talking strictly tiers, I have to assume Patty McCombs is better than what he's been putting on paper like the last year and change. So, and he's a better actual quarterback than fantasy quarterback. He moves up. Prescott, by hook or by crook, has always figured it out. Like, is there really that much of a difference between Burrows and Prescott? Like, not really. Like, you're going to get a little bit here and there. Like, yeah, Burrows is a much better actual NFL quarterback, but as far as fantasy goes, Daniels, again, we want to be good because, we like him, but that he could end the season behind Prescott. So, and then I've never been a Kyler Murray guy, so he automatically goes down a couple tiers. But he's super mushy with the down tier. Same thing with Bo Nix. Like I just I don't get the whole Bo Nix thing yet. Like maybe I don't know. I don't see it. So I think that gets mushy going down. So like you guys were saying, I think at this point, once we get past honestly top two is where I said it, and you guys argued the next three. But this is where what's available to you in the spot that you're picking and what does your team look like? Like if you feel rock solid in your first, six picks, yeah, okay, go get yourself a Dak Prescott if you feel like you need to. I don't think you need to, but I guess the better comp there would be Mahomes. That's who you're getting there, but it's whatever when we get down here.
And that's why it just makes sense to wait. I mean, these guys are going to start falling in your laps. The guys who've reached for those top four quarterbacks are going to have quarterbacks. They shouldn't be taking a second one this early. You're going to have plenty of guys, but, Bo Nix especially, I mean, and Mike talks about that a little bit also. It's just not for me. They added a ton with the running game, too, between R.J. Harvey and J.K. Dobbins. So I think they're going to run the ball a little bit more. And they almost threw as much as they did last year out of necessity because they had absolutely no run game. Javonte Williams looked washed, and they weren't getting much out of either of the other backs there either.
Sean Payton offenses, they throw to the running back quite a bit. So I think that helps Bo Nix tremendously as well. Those two are very talented running backs in the passing game as well. And then you add Evan Ingram there as well. Obviously, if he can stay healthy, that's a huge question. But I think he has some good weapons, and in this system, I think he could be good. And you see what he did as a rookie. He has a safe floor with the rushing. I do think there's going to be weeks where it's rough, but basically what I'm thinking with this tier is, again, it all depends on how your draft goes. I agree with you guys completely. I am fine waiting as long as possible, but these are the guys that I would prefer over the guys as we get a little bit further down. Just I think they have a little bit safer floors and can finish more in that 5 to 10 range, where the guys that we're going to talk about next have a little bit wider range of outcome. And I could see them finishing in this range, but I could see any one of them finishing eighth. I could see any one of them finishing 17th. So that's just kind of where my thinking is with these four. But if we move to the next range, you kind of already touched on it there. I do have Justin Fields at the top of this range here. I like Baker Mayfield as well, and then Justin Herbert and Jordan Love. Now, you could make this probably a 13-man tier if you really wanted to, because as I just said, I could see any of these guys finishing top 10. I could see them finishing 15 to 20. But Fields, I mean, the rushing alone, obviously, is huge. We've seen him be incredible for fantasy. We've also seen him last year not so much be incredible. Now, I do think that his floor is very, very low, but he also has that high upside. I do think that Tanner Engstrand coming over, that Ben Johnson style offense, they're going to run an RPO offense. Basically, it's just he has to make one read and either chuck it to Garrett Wilson or take off running. So that's pretty easy for him there. I do think that the O line has improved a little bit, and then obviously he's limited as a passer. But with the rushing upside that he has, he could literally throw for 2,500 yards and still be a top 10 quarterback. Baker Mayfield, he seems to have leveled up. Quarterback 3 last year. I'm not really expecting that. 4,500 yards, which was third most. 41 touchdowns, second most. I just they're all career highs, but I could see him doing that again. Now, obviously, the rushing was up a little bit higher last year than what we have seen previously. Not really more attempts, but just had some more long runs. So maybe that continues. But I do think that with this receiving core that he has and offense, obviously Liam Cohen is gone, but I think Rizzard is going to run a pretty similar offense. So I do like Baker Mayfield here quite a bit. Justin Herbert, they let him throw a little bit more. Maybe that was more out of necessity. So if they do go a little more run heavy, maybe it hurts him. But I think you have a good wide receiver core there. I don't think Keenan Allen is incredible fantasy wise, but it definitely helps Herbert. So I do like him here. Has a little bit to offer with the rushing, and he never turns the ball over. Jordan Love, I think, is someone that you can definitely get late. I don't think that anybody really even wants him on their team, but people seem to forget that he started off that last year just was never right after Brazil. Hurt his MCL, then hurt his groin in week 8, elbow at the end of the season. Still threw for 3,300 yards, 25 touchdowns. He was tied for fourth in yards per attempt, ran for 247 in 2023. So you would expect him to run again if he is healthy. So I actually like him quite a bit with the receiving core that he has there. Now, again, you can make a case for anybody to come into this tier or some of these guys moving further down. But what are we thinking in this one, Mike?
I mean, I'll stop hammering home the mushy point thing because it is just mushy. Herbert's got the best arm talent of the group. So, he gives you absolutely zero rush side. But, in are the Chargers tend to play from behind even when they're supposed to be good. So, they win those dumb games that end up being 42-35. So, Herbert's going to have to throw a ton in those games. Like, even if they want to get more run heavy, it's easier said than done. I don't want to talk about Fields. I've always liked Fields. I don't want to talk about Fields. So you guys could do that. Baker Mayfield has had, like, this is what I mean about, like, I can't stay away from the mushiness. Mayfield is good. Like, is there really that much of a difference between Baker Mayfield and, Joe Burrow? I'm going to keep going back to that one because that's the standout in that second tier. Like, I just don't think so. Probably if you play it out 100 times, like, yeah, Burrow's going to have the edge there in 55 of them, but 45 times, like, Mayfield's going to finish ahead of him at the end of the year. So it's they're just all the same to me. Love is interesting because he did, when he was on, he was very, very on. Set the world on fire there for a couple of weeks, but sustainable. I mean, now we're going to start talking about, like, does he get hurt? Because it's been a couple of times now. So it's, that, no, I'm not going to talk about Fields. You guys talk about Fields. I bit my tongue. Go ahead.
I mean, we're venturing past the point of even QB1 now. So, once you've gotten the first 10 quarterbacks off the board, the only thing that you're looking for here is upside. And in a redraft league, if this doesn't work out and you take a swing and the miss, then you pick up one of these other 15 guys off the waiver wire too, or just stream them week after week. You've elected to not go and invest a lot of draft capital at any of these guys, which is why I like Fields even in the tier above, because I think you have significant upside, and if he sucks, you get rid of him, or he just sits on your bench. I like what you were talking about with Jordan Love. He was hurt a lot of the year last year, so falls into that upside category. I think we saw the best of Baker Mayfield last year. You're banking on him to repeat it, to draft him in this tier, because historically he's not a QB1. Justin Herbert, I got no argument with at all. But I would rather be digging down a little bit deeper into this list here for guys that are a little bit more unknown, because if you swing and miss, you're just going to go pick up another one of them. And we'll get into the rest of your tiers in a minute here, it seems.
Yeah, I think the rest of them, similar to the tier above this, these guys have a little bit less warts. Now, you can say that Fields maybe has a little more warts than the rest of these guys in this tier, but I think he has a little bit more upside. So that's why I have him here. And as we
I mean,
get a little bit further down, I just think some of these guys concern me a little more.
does Fields have a ton of warts, though? You're drafting a running back that throws the
Yeah,
ball occasionally at quarterback. He's not going to
well,
lose his job.
I mean, there is one issue.
What would that issue be?
Green and white.
Oh, that
He's
one.
wearing the wrong color shirt.
Well, yeah, but that just means he's probably going to get hurt. I mean,
Exactly.
he's still going to run for his life all over the field, and that's going to be fine for fantasy football, and I'm completely okay with having that as QB1. Maybe you're going to invest a little bit more in a backup quarterback in that case if Fields is your QB1, but I mean, he has the potential to finish near the top in, that second tier for sure as a top 5 quarterback here based on rushing alone. If he adds anything with Garrett Wilson, and man, I don't know how the Jets didn't add more around him. How Josh Reynolds is your wide receiver too here. Just,
Do you know
I
why?
mean,
They
because
add
they're
Josh.
the Jets.
Nope, they added Josh Reynolds and Tyler Johnson for the simple fact that they are graded out as two of the best run blocking receivers in football.
Yeah.
They are going to run the ball. They are running an RPO offense. It's literally that. They are either handing the ball to Brees, throwing the ball to Brees. Every once in a while, Braylon Allen. Fields is going to run, or he's just going to throw it to Garrett Wilson.
I
That's
mean,
their
there is one problem with an RPO, though. You need to have the, pass part of it be a threat. Because if you're just faking the pass each and every time to run, eventually you will, defenses will hone in on that.
Oh
There's
yeah,
not much of an RPO if you don't have anybody that can win downfield outside of
Can we
Garrett
just
Wilson.
run triple option? Put Allen and Hall out there at the same time and just run high school triple option offense like that. That works.
That's
High school
basically
teams don't need more than one wide receiver. It'll
your
be
team is
fine.
built. Your team is built for that. This for the triple option right now. I mean, that's a much better outcome than trying to throw it to anybody but Garrett Wilson out there. And Mason Taylor's already hurt.
is still on this team. Okay,
Who's that? Oh, Aaron Lazard.
Not for long. He'll be in Pittsburgh soon enough.
honestly, the worst part is Mason Taylor, the fact that he's dealing with the ankle injury. Because I do think that right out of the gates he would have been a necessity. So hopefully he can heal up. I do think that he's actually a pretty good receiver and could actually have an okay year if he's healthy. But Dave, you said a lot of these names down further you might rather reach for. Go ahead,
Mm-hmm.
pick one.
Whether it might be Drake May looking for that second year leap, whether it is JJ McCarthy, who, is in his quote unquote rookie year with a ton of upside and a lot of draft capital. Brock Purdy could, continue to ascend. I mean, people call him a game manager. It's not long ago that we were talking about CJ Stroud being a generational talent. He had one bad year. There's no reason that he couldn't bounce back again. I mean, these are the types of names that I'm looking to gamble on late, as my flyer QB. I want to lean into uncertainty. I mean, we're recording on a Thursday night where Anthony Richardson already, has left the game with a hand injury, but he's not my QB1 option. But these are the types of picks and quarterbacks that I'd be looking for when
So
I
you're
want
in
when I want
Daniel
to
Jones.
pass.
Gotcha.
No, I don't want Daniel Jones. We played with the Daniel Jones experiment, in New York a little bit. That's completely fine on the other end. But listen, if I'm going to wait until the very end to pick up a quarterback and Daniel Jones is still sitting there, I think he's got upside. We know he can run the ball. We know he can't throw the ball very well. He's got some weapons. But I would much rather play around with this type of stuff than guys that you pretty much know where their ceiling is. I would rather be gambling on these types of picks and leaning into the potential upside and the uncertainty than going with what this deep, into QB1 land.
Yeah, I think at this point, if you're waiting on a quarterback, it's taking upside. It absolutely is. Just some of these guys worry me a lot. Caleb, especially. I think that there are so many weapons there, but does it matter? There's just so many times I saw last year where he even had a clean pocket and it was just terrible. It just, but with these weapons, maybe he can take a step forward. So it's a possibility. I do like Drake May quite a bit. I think he has the rushing upside. The concern is the offensive line, but you have Josh McDaniels there. I do think that he's going to put him in a position to make the right decisions and play well. I think a healthy Diggs is nowhere near what he used to be, but definitely a solid option, better than what this team has had in a long time. I love Kyle Williams. I think that he's a guy that has big play upside. Hunter Henry just is always there. He's reliable. So I like May quite a bit.
And
Goff,
and I mean
go
that's
ahead.
the, I mean the point of this also is, I mean, it's the draft capital that you're spending. You're talking about 12th, 13th round picks that could end up as your QB1. And then, if you're going to wait, you've already drafted a lot of talent on your skill position players above this. And you're going to pick a couple of these guys and hope one of them hits, and you drop the trash as they go along and you stream. I think that you've got to think of a little bit of a different way to build your team out when you are drafting these guys as your first quarterback, which is going to be wildly different than your Josh Allen teams, your Lamar Jackson teams. This, you're going to be trying to pepper the range with skill position players because you have your alpha QB and you forewent a lot of those high end running backs and wide receivers. So there's a lot to do with building, but leaning into the upside, and even Caleb Williams, I mean, he's a great guy to take a shot on here too, because if he sucks, you just get rid of him. But I think there is a lot of upside with the coordinator change, and you have an adult in the room and Ben Johnson that knows the offense. I mean, this stuff is where you win fantasy championships.
Yeah, and I think that's the only concern is, yeah, if they suck, you can get rid of them. But if you wait too long and you lose 4 games to start the season, then you're playing catch up and trying to possibly stream quarterbacks. So it is pretty important that you get it right too. So just another name I wanted to bring up is Jared Goff, because I know a lot of people do have him higher. He's going basically right after Kyler in a lot of drafts. I purposely left him out there because, you know, we've made the comp to Burrow several times. That's exactly what Goff is. Now they do have a great offense, a lot of weapons. I think the offensive line has taken a little bit of a step back. Ben Johnson leaving, you don't know how much that's really going to affect him. They're saying they're going to let Goff make a lot more calls at the line. If anybody remembers, that's part of the reason why he was not great on the Rams, and the Rams let him go. Is McVay was basically calling everything in his ear, and then as soon as the mic turned off, the defense changed, and he was struggling. So I think he's definitely progressed very much since then, but I do have some concerns with Goff, and I don't think they're going to be as efficient as they were last year. Because similar to Burrow, they had so many injuries on defense that they were relying on just blitzing the shit out of everybody, and that was their whole defense. I think the defense is going to be much improved this year. They're not going to have to rely on airing it out as much. I think they're going to rely a little bit more on the running game. And I think it caps him a little bit, and is just a strictly pocket passer. It concerns me a little bit. Now, with that being said, the guys that we're talking about right now, maybe I do like him a little bit more than some of those guys there. But Mike, what do you think? Are there any guys that you would like to target in this range?
I like Goff. I'm a guy, I'm going to compare him to the same ones I've been going all along. Is there that much of a difference with Burrow? Is there that much of a difference with Baker? Like, I think Goff is right there with him. He's boring as shit, but at the end of the year, he could sneak his way into a, top 7, top 10 type of season. I'm a big CJ Stroud fan. I'm hoping for a bounce back year here. I think Caleb sucks. I thought Caleb sucked coming out of college, so I'm totally good passing on that. Nothing new. Another conceptual question. In higher level leagues, what someone would consider a higher level league, where quarterback does tend to slip and fall because everyone's targeting wide receivers, everyone's targeting running backs. You see quarterbacks drop a lot. Could you envision a world where in a quote unquote higher level league, you get Allen and Lamar going off the board, and then you're looking at round 10, round 12, and you've still got almost every other quarterback on the board because everyone's passing and waiting, where you're trying to scale back, and you could actually get a Burrow down here. You can get a Daniels down here because everyone has the same mentality. Like, if they're all mushed together, I'll just wait.
I mean, I don't think it's you're going to get the Burrow Daniel. I don't think you're getting the top 2 tiers down in this range. But you're right. After those top 2 tiers that we went through, why not just wait? And you can take someone that's boring like a Jared Goff, a Geno Smith, and pair them with your majorly uncertain quarterback that you want to keep as QB1, because there's going to be a run on them as you get to the draft, and everyone's waiting, and then eventually one goes, and then they all go. But there's really no reason to reach up for any of these guys once you get past the top 4 or 5.
Yeah, but I
Yeah,
could see that run being down here. I could see it being round 10, round 12, something
And
like that.
and there's going to be 10, 12, 14 quarterbacks that are all about the same, that are all going to go in the same one. So, pick a couple of them and just move along.
yeah, and I think Mike, to your point, is in some leagues, you'll have people waiting on quarterback, and it'll be probably like around 5, 6 where you're getting Burrow, Daniels, and then it's probably 8 to 10 where a lot of these guys are going to start going, because what'll happen is once that run starts going, everybody's going to be like, all right, everybody waited. I'm fine. Rounds 8 to 10, 11, they're not going to want to completely wait, because yeah, you can make a case that any of these guys could, but what could happen is if people are waiting this long, they may end up taking two quarterbacks. So if people start doing that, then you're really going to see a run on it. So I don't think it's going to get too deep down there, and I do think that the higher guys are going to be in that maybe 5 to 7 range there. So just a couple more guys to touch on. I like your call on Stroud. I do think that he could have a bounce back year. Now, obviously, on this show last year, he was going way too high. I pumped the brakes on him a little bit and said I didn't like it. But Bobby Slowick was absolutely horrific as a play caller last year. It was just run the ball, run the ball, run the ball, run the ball, and put him in terrible situations. The offensive line was an absolute disaster. Now, obviously, they got rid of their best offensive lineman and didn't really make many improvements, but they made changes. So, at the very least, I don't think it's going to be worse. Maybe it's not much better, but it can't be much worse than it was last year. Obviously, they added some rookie help. They have Christian Kirk. So, I do think that he could make some improvements here this year, and I like it quite a bit. I think that I do like him. Doesn't add much with the legs, so that is a little bit of a concern for the upside. But if we're talking about a lot of these guys here, then I do think that it makes a ton of sense for him to potentially have a bounce back. And then just, I think Bryce Young actually might be fantasy viable. He ran quite a bit towards the end of the year. I mean, the back half of last year, he actually didn't look terrible, and they've added some weapons as well. So I really thought I left him for dead basically last year. And as the year went on, actually played him a little bit in DraftKings, and he was actually performing pretty well. So I actually think that he could potentially be a value down here. I mean, you look at his last 3 games last year: 27 points, 17 points, 36 points against Atlanta in week 18. He had a 23-point game in week 13. Those are pretty good outputs there for Bryce Young. And I think he has a far better receiving core this year than he did last year. Adds a little bit with the legs. And that's probably as far as I'm willing to go here. You guys got anyone else to add down here at the end, or we done there?
I mean, there's so many names, and I think that's the point. I mean, we haven't gone across Geno, we haven't gone across Tua, we haven't gone across Cam Ward, the first pick in the draft. That could be good. Um, and Michael Penix, who we haven't seen much of, who's going to be in his rookie and a half year. We just now ran through after the first, handful. It's just so many guys. Matt Stafford, no one we haven't talked about yet. He's got the back issue.
Yeah,
But
nope.
I really like you don't feel like you're not going wrong here, that there's just so many names, using Mike's words, mushed into one big tier that, pick who you like and go with it, because there is a ton of options, and not all these guys are going to get drafted.
Yeah, I like the Penix call too. I just he aired it out last year, and I think that they're not going to be a great team. They're probably going to have to pass quite a bit. So
And he's got
it,
weapons, and,
yep,
it's Kyle Pitts' season again, right?
of course it is. Perfect segue. It's like you've been doing this for a long time here, because we're going to go to tight ends now, because I think we've pretty much exhausted the quarterback. So tight end tiers, I think it's a pretty clear cut tier, as we were talking about with quarterback. I think there's elite, and then it falls off a cliff. But I do think that these guys are definitely the elite of the elite here. So Brock Bowers, Trey McBride, George Kittle. Bowers, obviously, incredible year last year. Third most receptions, 112, set the rookie tight end record over Laporta. And the rookie record for yards or receptions over Puka. 1,194 yards. That was a rookie tight end record over Ditka. Only had 5 touchdowns, so that concerns you a little. But you would think that would go up a little bit better with more efficiency in the offense. He was targeted a ridiculous amount, tied with the fourth most targets in the league, same as Justin Jefferson. I don't think that's going to be any different. I think he is the clear-cut number one target here for Geno in this offense. Trey McBride, pretty good year himself. 111 receptions. That was fourth in the league. 147 targets, sixth most in the league. And that's not just for tight ends. That's in the league. All pass catchers. 30% target share, 1,146 yards. The big thing was the touchdowns. Only had 2 of them last year. He is far too talented for that to be the case. I mean, even if he only scores 5 and you get those yardage and reception output, I think that he is definitely a clear cut above the rest of these tight ends lower down. George Kittle, 78 receptions, so nowhere near the reception volume that you saw from these other two, but 1,100 yards, 8 touchdowns, and that is something that we're probably going to see again because there's a lot of questions in this receiving core for San Francisco, and he's probably going to be the number one target here. So I definitely see Kittle repeating here. 11.8 yards per target. I mean, that is ridiculous, especially for a tight end. Bowers and McBride both were at 7.8 yards. So that is definitely, he's getting downfield targets, he's getting chunk plays, and he scores touchdowns. So I do like the 3 of these guys quite a bit. And the only thing I will say, you can't knock Bowers. I do think that he is a great option, but where he's going, I just, it's a little rich for my blood. So I don't know if I'm necessarily going to be able to get to the second round on him. But Dave, what are you thinking about this top tier of tight ends?
That I mean, Bowers is a standalone for me, based on talent, opportunity. He's a target monster, and like you just said, mostly ADP. These guys are going probably around a part of each other. So I think Bowers is probably your standalone here, and then you go down to McBride and Kittle in the next tier. McBride did everything that he could, also target monster, didn't score touchdown until the end of the year. He could push his way up into the top tier for sure. And Kittle gets there on efficiency. He has those blow-up games, and now that you remove Deebo from that offense, you've got Ayuk banged up for a little bit. You've got Pearsall and Jennings banged up a little bit. He could end up leading as the alpha, and you want to bank on him really increasing that target share this year, but you're gambling on that actually happening because if his role stays the same as last year, tight end 3 might be a little bit high, but I still think he's the most talented pass catcher in that offense right now. But don't disagree with your top 3 at all. I would just put Powers in a tier on his own.
Fair enough. Mike, what about you?
I think I agree. I think it's Bowers kind of alone there. Like you said, to his stomach, ADP, second round tight end is never super comfortable if that's where he's going. Now, Kittle, no matter if he has 5 touchdowns or if he has 10 touchdowns, doesn't it feel like he always should have more touchdowns? Like, we get to watch a lot of San Francisco games, just from national coverage and shit like that. And it always just feels like he should have more. He gets running touches, and now with Deebo gone, like that should get more. I could see him in spots being a goal line back for them. So they're probably there. I think there's one name from the next tier that is potentially, if you separate Bowers, I think he might sneak up into this one, but I think we're getting there.
All right, so let's jump right there then. So this one, I have 3 guys, and this, again, it's those top 3 are clear cut, and then there's a big drop off. I don't know who you were necessarily alluding to, Mike, but I think that people are sleeping on drugs. Yeah.
I think La Puerta still has talent.
I do too, absolutely. But I just made the case against Jared Goff, so it's part of the reason why I think Laporta probably lives in this range here. And I could see with Laporta just similar to last year, where it's he has games, but there's games where he just disappears just due to the offense and how many weapons they have. I mean, it's clearly going to run through Gibbs and Amon Ra. You're going to have Jamison Williams games. You're going to have games where Montgomery is such a threat in the red zone, but I do think you could see games where Laporta is 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. So I think at the end of the season, total fantasy points, he's clearly going to be up there. He could finish third overall. I just think we're going to see similar to years past of Kittle, where it's not as much consistency. So that's why I have him down here a little bit. And then with Kelsey, I mean, he's nowhere near what he used to be. That's very, very clear. But he is still one of the best tight ends in football, and where he's going, I absolutely love it. If I left my drafts and Kelsey was my tight end, I would be very, very happy. But I do think that you're not going to bank on what he used to be, but he still led the league in red zone targets or targets inside the 10-yard line last year. Didn't really result into touchdowns. He only had 3, which was a career low, but still had 97 receptions. I mean, he was used quite a bit. And people make the case that, well, he didn't produce when Rashee Rice was going off. I said it earlier when I was making the case with Mahomes. He was hurt to begin the year. So they eased him in, and, that was when Rashee Rice went off out of necessity. So I still think that this offense is going to run primarily through him, and he's not going to have those big games, but I think he's going to be one of the more consistent tight ends here, where week to week he may not win you the week like he used to, but I do think that he may be a step up of a lot of the other tight ends that we see here. And then TJ Hawkinson, I don't love it. I just we don't know what JJ McCarthy is going to be, but I think with the Addison suspension, it could be a necessity to start off. So I do think that gives you a little bit upper hand, and if he can build some rapport in that time with McCarthy, then I think that it helps him quite a bit. And we obviously know the talent is there, and he should be a little bit more healthy this year. So that's why I have this tier. What are you guys thinking here? Because similar to quarterback, I mean, we can just anybody can finish anywhere here outside of those top 3, I think. But what are you thinking, Mike?
I just Laporta jumps off the screen because we watch our games on TVs. Those boxes with moving pictures. It's. I think the better that Jamison Williams gets, the more he develops, the more that opens up Laporta. He's going to be taking safeties off the top of the defense. It's going to open up the middle. Amon-Ra is always going to command double coverage. Yeah, it's going to be a little boomer busty, but I still think that it's not impossible that he's up there with McBride and Kittle at the end of the year. I think Kelsey is here by name only. Like, I know you're saying that, targets and receptions and all it, just like we get to watch a lot of San Francisco games on national broadcast, we watch way too many Chief games on national broadcast. And Kelsey, like, even though he gets his touch, it doesn't look good. Like, it looks a little ugly, like in real time while we're out there.
Nowhere near what he used to be, but I think he's going to be one of the more consistent tight ends. And that is something that you don't get from the tight end position. So that's the only reason why I'm saying that.
I mean, you've said a lot of positive words about Travis Kelsey so far, but we haven't established, talked about the fact that he's a 36-year-old tight end at the top of your second tier here. And for me, I mean, it's the same thing that Mike was talking about. I'd rather bank on a younger talent like Laporta continuing the ascension, a guy like Hawkinson continuing to get better and getting further and further away from injury. Kelsey's on the downward trend, and yeah, he's a safe pick. But when these guys are all going around the same part of the draft, I mean, I would rather bank on the other two than Kelsey here.
That's fair. And I just the tight end position is just such a disaster. I really think if you're not getting one of those top 3 guys, yeah, you want upside, but it's really underrated just having a guy that can get you 10 to 15 points every week. You get that, you're basically outscoring half of
I'm
your league at the tight end position every
I
single
don't think that that's Travis Kelsey anymore. I mean, I think this year
year.
there's a main goal of getting him healthy to the postseason for what should be his last ride. I mean, I can't see him playing much more past this year, maybe one more past it. They're not going to be giving him heavy utilization in the regular season because the goal is to win a Super Bowl, and he should be there at the end of the year. Even a guy like Mark Andrews, you can put in this tier, and I would put him above Kelsey, strictly because, I mean, a lot to do with the likely injury, his chemistry with Lamar. I mean, he's not young, but he's not as old as Kelsey, and does get a lot of touchdowns and that 10 to 15 points that you were talking about also. And the longer that likely's out, the more opportunities he's going to get. Yeah, there was some trade chatter in the offseason with him, but he's still there. And when you talk about reliable weapons on the Ravens outside of the running back, Mark Andrews is still probably your number one option in the pass catching role.
That's fair. My concern with Mark Andrews is he was basically a glorified left tackle for the beginning of last season. And yes, likely will be out, so he's gonna have to be utilized, but it's only the second time where he's had a touchdown output like that in his career. And I don't know if you're banking on double digit touchdowns for him this week or this year. And that's if he's not scoring touchdowns, he's literally going to get you 3 points. So that's my concern there. And that's basically what I'm saying there with I think Kelsey's going to be a little more consistent. And if you don't think he's going to get that target volume, then absolutely stay away from him. That's just kind of the differentiator for me there. But that actually, we might as well go into tier three because I mean, this one I basically just have everybody else because at this point it's tight end. You have no idea what's going to happen. But Njoku, obviously, we've seen he has the ability. We don't know who the quarterback's going to be, but he should be one of the top targets there. I like Evan Ingram quite a bit. I think Sean Payton has shown that he likes that joker role. He's not necessarily a Taysom Hill, but I think he's a guy that they're going to move around the formation quite a bit and try to get him the ball. With him, it's just a matter of health. Mark Andrews is still going to be there. Go ahead.
Have we heard more about the Joker role in Sean Payton's offense this year or about rookies impressing in camp? Because every single day I seem to see a lot of both of it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's one of the things about this time of year that it gets exhausting of just the same thing over and over. And my favorite thing is just the highlights of just deep touchdown. Look at this rookie scored a touchdown. It's like no, that's
No, but just hearing about the Joker consistently in Peyton's offense is just really, I've had enough of hearing about it. Is it going to be Peyton? Or is it going to be Ingram? Is it going to be one of these other guys? I mean, I'm not even sure what the Joker role really is to begin with, but I think I've
and
heard way too much about it.
I do say it tongue in cheek, but it is. I do think Ingram fits a Sean Payton style offense. That's basically the point I'm making. But yeah, the Joker role thing is absolutely exhausting at this point. Someone that I think actually makes a little bit of sense is Tucker Kraft. I mean, he was pretty good last year, came out of nowhere and had a pretty efficient season, has some big play upside, so I don't hate him. Jake Ferguson was good 2 years ago. I mean, maybe if Dak is healthy this year and you have a lot of focus on Pickens and Lamb, maybe he could be good. Obviously, Loveland and Warren are supposed to be the next big thing. Does it happen right away? I don't necessarily know. I worry a little bit about Warren just with the quarterback play in Indy, but he could be needed there. And then Loveland, there's a lot of mouths to feed in there, but we know Ben Johnson what he did with Laporta, so that's definitely in play as well. But what do you guys think for the rest of here? Are there? I mean, really at this point, any name that you really think could potentially come in?
I mean, I've got a couple of favorites in this range here. Jake Ferguson's definitely one of them. I think that Dallas is going to be very pass happy in general. They added Pickens. I think Dak is just going to throw the ton out of the ball because I just don't see it with their running game at the moment. You got to bet on talent with Loveland and Warren. The draft capital, both were first round picks, both were high first round picks. So I'm happy taking a flyer on that type of upside. Um, One name you didn't go into is Dallas Goddard if you're just looking for consistency. I mean, a
Eh,
lot of these guys, like you said, they're just a guy, but he's consistent. He's on the field. He doesn't have much target competition outside of Smith and Brown. Granted,
he
there's not a
really
lot of targets to go around.
been producing much though is the problem.
Yeah, I mean Dalton Kincaid, same thing in that same ilk there. But we can get rid of those guys in terms of just consistency and things that they should be good. And I'll throw one last name at you, and it'll be the last time this year. Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts again. We've got a new quarterback. We've got new offensive scheme. I've heard that he plays golf with Michael Penix, unless I'm confusing one of those narratives that I've heard nonsense
No,
around training camp.
yeah, that's yeah.
But I bet on talent. I hope he's healthy. But if the quarterback change is the only reason why he gets his fourth life again.
Yeah, I think if you're waiting and you get him late enough, I think it's fine because I mean you can make a case for or against any of these guys down here. So if you want to take a chance on it, I think it's fine. So I don't hate that. I think you said Goddard, but Goddard, I don't think there's any upside there. Maybe he has 2 games where he's really productive, but there's just too many games where he disappears. I'd rather take a chance on Kincaid. I do think that maybe he takes a step forward, possibly, and he has Josh Allen throwing the ball, so maybe it's worth a shot. Mike, what about you?
I think this is our third or fourth preseason tight end show, and this is just the part of the show where I say, "Who gives a shit?" Just
Yep.
who gives a shit? Like nobody gives a shit. Just take one. It's not going to be on your roster the entire year. You're probably going to drop him by week 3. You're going to flex him in with somebody else. Like you're going to be streaming tight end. It just is what it is. I'll throw another conceptual question out there. If Likely wasn't hurt, where does Likely fall in your tiers? And does he do anything to Andrews?
It's a good
Yeah,
stash.
I I honestly might like him more than Andrews because
That's my point. And if he wasn't hurt, like is Andrews completely off of your tiers here and is Likely, I don't think, maybe he's
I don't.
kind of in the tier by himself between 2 and 3. I don't know.
It drags him down for sure, Andrews,
Yeah,
that is, if Likely's, the only reason why Andrews is this high, he would be lumped in with the rest of them if Likely wasn't hurt.
yep.
Because Likely is hurt, it's a lot of targets headed his way in general. But Likely, I think, is very talented. And, if we were going into the season, Likely, like you said, he might have been above Andrews just based on upside because he's athletic. He seemed to attract a lot of targets while he was healthy and out there with Lamar last year, even with Andrews on the field. Um, but it's a tough way to start camp with an injury, a leg injury.
Yeah. One name that I will throw out there before we get away, Dave, Theo Johnson.
I
I
mean,
think he's a freak of nature. He has great ball skills, and he could be a necessity on that offense. And I mean, there's no one else. Wandale is terrible. Slayton is run down the field and catch the ball. I think
he doesn't
Theo
catch
Johnson,
those balls.
not usually, but I think Theo Johnson could actually be a potential upside
I
deep
mean, it's
tight end.
fine. It's fine. Mike Gesicki, I kind of like too. If we're
Yeah,
down at the bottom here,
I liked him, but now they added Noah Fant, and
and
I'm not
Noah
crazy.
Fant sucks. He
Yeah, he
doesn't stay
does.
healthy. He doesn't do anything.
Fucking Drew Sample that they're gonna throw out there too for half the fucking snaps. Like
Drew,
Gesicki,
Drew Sample had a couple of games that I think won teams million. Won a couple
but that's
people $1 million last year.
all eats into Gesicki. You would think Gesicki would be the fucking tight end, but he's
Yeah.
splitting Drew fucking Sample.
No. Every year I hear about Noah Fant sleeper, and he just never
Oh
put
no, I
it
don't
together.
like Noah Fant. I just think that it hurts Gesicki.
I don't think it really matters, quite honestly. They gave Gesicki a lot of money. They didn't give Fant much money guaranteed. He's going to be there as an insurance policy in a block. But I mean, listen, when you are down this deep, it doesn't really matter because there are going to be names and there are going to be names that are available anyway. Since we're just throwing out names for the sake of throwing out names, what's this guy's first name? Um, Elijah Arroyo. Um, I think
That's fair.
he's got a lot of potential in that office. Speaking of Noah Fant, he was good enough to get rid of Noah Fant, so that says a lot for Elijah Arroyo. Liked him coming out of college, decent landing spot, and that's another offense in Seattle that, geez, I mean, they wanted Mike's boy Sam to really be successful. He's got nothing past Jackson Smith and Jigba there, so it's another. I don't know who's running the show over there, but you spend a lot of money on a quarterback. You'd probably want to put some weapons around him so he doesn't look like the old Sam Darnold again. But
They had
who the hell
Marquez.
knows? Yeah, who's already losing his job at the moment. So, I didn't realize he should have had a job to begin with. He should have been out of the league at least 5 years ago at this point. Although he did pop up for a couple of weeks span last year where
And
he
that was
looked like himself again.
Kubiak, who is now the offensive coordinator in Seattle. So that's probably the reason there. But
Yeah,
as
but
Mike said
they
before,
don't play in the King. They don't play in the Superdome though. Valdez Scantling's only fast in the Superdome.
that's fair. That's fair. That's a fair point. But yeah, nobody cares about these scrubs down here. It's basically at this point you're just spinning around in a circle and throwing a dart. So we did it, boys. First show of the NFL season, quarterbacks and tight ends. We basically went through all of them. Dave, any parting words for the first show of the NFL season?
I feel like we've said all the words for tonight. We'll say more on other shows.
That's a very good point, Mike.
Yeah, we'll get better. We're still knocking the rust off too.
Yeah, preseason form. All right, gentlemen. Well, that's going to do it for this one. It was fun. NFL season, obviously, as we were saying, preseason form, but we went through it. We got through all of it. Quarterbacks, tight ends. Very excited for the NFL season. As I said, go to themadlabmma.com. Everything you need there for combat sports and the NFL, we will have it on lock. And we will be back next week with the wide receivers, breaking all of that down. So definitely check it out. Leave a review. Helps tremendously going into the NFL season. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening. Sorry if there was any audio issues. My mic took a crap right in the beginning, but we made it through. So thank you for listening. I am your host, Derek Helm. And remember,
Just have fun out there.